Hello again, this is Professor Luchin with Lecture 5 from Safety 380, Introduction to Occupational Safety and Health. I believe in the last video I may have called this course by its old name. Sorry about that. So today what I'd like to do is just give you a brief overview of the EHS profession, mostly summarizing Chapter 2 from the National Safety Council book, Admin and Programs. And then I'd like to talk about the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, the National Safety Council and the Wisconsin Safety Council. I also added something about an international group called INSHPO. So let's go. For this week, you do have to read Chapter 2 from the textbook, the Admin and Programs one. The assignment has 4 questions from Lectures 4 and 5. There is a quiz based on primarily the items on the study sheets from the lectures, but also I may select a few questions from the questions at the back of the chapter. And then I've got some other videos I'd like you to watch. Just really short videos from these different organizations. So as I had indicated in Lecture 1, when I was kind of talking about, why safety professionals are so passionate, one thing I said is that every day is different. And the reason I took to this profession is because I was able to utilize the technical knowledge I had. I'm an engineer. I like to evaluate things and analyze and take them apart and understand how they work, and it allowed me to do that. But then on the other side of that, if you're going to be successful in this field, you have to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to relate to people. You have to understand things work from their perspective. Then you can be successful. And so as far as areas go, there are areas that you can specialize in, but one thing I tell my students is, the first 2 to 3 years after school, you really can't make a mistake with selecting a job, whether it's with a company, with an industry, because you can jump around. It's just House of Pain, jump around. As long as you don't stay in one place for too long, then you won't be kind of labeled an expert in that field, and it may be difficult to transition over. We, in our program here, have a lot of construction safety students. It's just our students prefer to go into that industry. We tend to train our students as generalists, which means you can go anywhere you want, and then you can supplement your general education with a specific field or skill set. We have an increasing number of students going into insurance, which on here is called loss control or risk management. We have some students pursue industrial hygiene. That's how I got into this field, was through industrial hygiene. Those students tend to have to go get a master's degree after their undergrad, just to specialize in order to elevate themselves to be able to sit for the CIH exam to get that designation, because you need that to practice industrial hygiene. Health and medical is also an adjacent field. We do have some students that go in that direction, but it's typically students who come in with like a emergency responder background or firefighter background. Then they may move into these medical field. As far as engineering goes, not as much as it used to. Since we're not housed within, our program isn't housed within an engineering school, we're within a business school. We tend to not have as many students go into engineering, though that's where most of the faculty in this program have their background. So we have this technical behind us. The other side is environmental. We have quite a few students who pursue the environmental emphasis. But I think even some of you in this class are actually in environmental studies. And so you would be more prone to take this information and apply it towards the environmental. That was my focus of my education when I was an undergrad, was environmental engineering. We have several faculty members who are experts in ergonomics and human factors. That's what I studied in graduate school. But when I came to Whitewater, because we had so many experts already there, I kind of left that alone. And I've been focusing more on management and data analysis, things like that. We do have faculty that specialize in emergency planning, disaster response. And that's another area you can go into, especially in this day and age. It seems like there are more potentials for disasters, whether it's man-made or natural. And then public safety, which we'll talk a little bit about public safety when it comes to National Safety Council and Wisconsin Safety Council, but we don't have considerable, I should say, expertise in driver safety, at-home safety, though we do cover these topics in, I believe, our personal public safety class, Safety 201. For our degree, our students are required to take math, stats, chemistry, physics, biology as sort of a foundation. I took a lot more than what is required. I think all the faculty did. So we're very comfortable with the basic STEM type courses. As far as engineering, we do have a course on analysis and design, but the design, I wouldn't call it design or engineering in its purest sense. It's, I mean, really, I've had parents of potential students come talk to me. They're like, "Well, I don't see any engineering classes. How can you be a science degree?" And I told them that I have several degrees in engineering, and what I found is it's the technique, and then adopting the natural world relationships in that technique in order to do that type of work. And I believe that's what we do in safety, but we include engaging workers, talking to supervisors. And so it's built around the scope of work, context of a work system. So there isn't like the actual like mechanical, electrical, chemical type engineering, but we are doing a form of engineering. You could call it safety engineering. You could call it work engineering. I believe that. As far as health and environmental sciences, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in if I didn't take all that coursework and learn from occupational docs. I understand how things affect the body. Example, there was a news story on just last night about they called it a gas leak at a I believe it's a meatpacking plant. It might have been in Georgia, somewhere down south. And they said people were falling ill, but they said, right away, I'm like, well, it's probably the refrigerant. And the typical refrigerant in large meatpacking is ammonia. It's a substance that can be compressed and expanded in order to operate a large industrial freezer or cooling system. They were saying it was nitrogen. It just doesn't sit with me, because as you sit here listening to me, the atmosphere for what you're breathing contains about 78% nitrogen. So nitrogen doesn't have a toxic effect on us. It's inert and it's already there. So if people got exposed to it, now there may be an oxygen deficiency due to it if there's a lot of nitrogen, but then you wouldn't actually have a toxic response, is what they had said on the news story. So, ammonia, on the other hand, is toxic to humans. It attacks the mucous membrane, so it'll burn your eyes, burn your sinuses, your throat, because as you basically introduce water to ammonia, it converts to nitric acid. And so it has burning, and if you get it into your system, it's bad. Okay, I'm getting off on a tangent, I apologize. Other things, so the behavior and communication sciences, totally agree, especially when it comes to doing training. We do a lot of training in safety, a lot of training in education. Management and business, of course, if you're ineffective at delegating and linking safety to the business, you're not going to do well. We attempt to apply what we're seeing at minimum to OSHA standards or other consensus standards. And it requires a lot of assessment and trying to determine what we can do to prevent things from happening again. All this, I love all this stuff that we just covered. As far as functions go, and I believe this is pretty close to what you'd find in the ANSI Z590.2 document, that our primary responsibility is to assess the work environment for potential hazards or risks for injury. Then we have to develop control strategies. Now, if we don't have the social strengths or the social skills to talk to workers to understand those exposures, or to understand how solutions may be incorporated into the work itself, we won't be as successful as we should. Communication is key. One thing I talk about in one of my upperclassmen courses is to present to management data, but in a way that presents them with a narrative, and that narrative is meant to persuade. And then to document and evaluate the effectiveness of the program. If something's not working, you need to define what it is and try to resolve it. Otherwise, there is no improvement. So as I had mentioned just previously, we've got the ANSI standard here, and we just covered the main 4 functions of a safety professional. Caveat: there is no state or federal law that requires an accredited degree and a certifying exam in order to practice. Now, other traditional, more sovereign professions such as medicine, law, engineering, beauticians, they have to actually get a degree and sit for an exam to practice legally. We don't have that in safety. We've attempted to, I know in different groups have attempted to push that forward, but because I think, it's about a 50-50, I believe, that maybe have a degree and maybe have sort of designation. But nothing required. And I just feel that because we are so driven by OSHA standards that I'm surprised something hasn't come out yet. But it would require half the people, 1 in every 2 person who considers himself a safety practitioner or safety professional, to possibly pursue and attain a designation and or degree to practice. We just don't have that right now. I'm not pushing for it because I know there are some very competent people out there who don't have a degree, don't have a designation or a certification. They're doing a pretty good job. Of course, opposingly, we have the opposite side where somebody just, took the easiest, cheapest degree they could, purchased and attended a class to prepare for the certification. So they don't really have the skills, knowledge, and abilities, but they found shortcuts in order to get the degree and the designation behind their name, and now people trust them, and they shouldn't. So that should probably be the first priority if we're going to move towards a professional law for practice. I provided you with an updated hiring a safety professional document. I'd like to look through it, especially since we have so many students who are in HR in this class. Just take a look at it to see what they're recommending. Now, this is from the American Society of Safety Professionals. So they're attempting to promote the profession as something that, is respected and ethical. And so, that's their definition of it. Whether people follow these things, it depends on each individual company, right? Internationally, now we've been talking primarily based in the United States. And when you read the National Safety Council, they, again, are limited to the United States. But there's this international group that actually came up with a list of competencies for different levels of, there's practitioner and professional. I think they should add a third, which would be expert, much like the old guild type classification where you're apprentice, journeyman, master. I think they should have come up with that, but they didn't. I wasn't on the committee. But it's a good start, I believe. I provided you with one of their documents. I do not expect you to read it. I expect you just kind of look it over to see how detailed it is. Whenever I've participated on a task force or a committee through the American Society of Safety Professionals to kind of define educational standards or things like this, things that we should be practicing, it's so broad that it's really difficult. And also you've got experts attempting to define what an entry-level person must know, and they don't have that capability. There's too much bias in their perspective, and we've gotten into some really big arguments. Like they don't see it from a person who's just getting into the field, and a person who's just getting into the field sees it differently. So INSHPO, you can check it out. I just want you to be aware of it, aware of what it is, that Australia and Europe and Canada are really ahead of the U.S. in defining the profession, and probably even in many ways in how they practice. All right, so in the last lecture, we covered the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. And one of the 3 big national changes that came out of that, post-fire was the casualty inspectors, which became the ASSE, then ASSP. A group was built out of, they called themselves the First Safety Congress. They became the National Safety Council. You can see that on the screen right now. Third was the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA. That designation probably sounds familiar to you. So I provided a few videos from National Safety Council, and you'd say, well, why do we need a National Safety Council and an ASSP? Well, the National Safety Council is more encompassing. They talk about home safety. A majority of the materials you'll find on their website have to do with driver safety, because vehicular accidents are the primary cause of injuries, at least in the workplace. So it's more broad, and it's not, they don't typically have an individual membership. It's usually a company membership. So they provide resources, training to companies versus the individual. Because so the ASSP is to the professional, the individual. National Safety Council is to the company, typically. And again, it's more broad perspective safety versus occupational safety. It tends to be more for the ASSP. National Safety Council, they have an annual meeting. It's enormous. It's again, size wise, it's bigger than ASSP's Professional Development Conference, but it's more for the exhibitors. So a company would send likely their safety committee people there to get additional training, maybe a certificate, and then they can walk through the enormous exhibit hall and meet vendors. That's what it's more geared toward. Versus ASSP, yes, they have a big exhibitor hall, but it's more dedicated to the education, the quality of education. Though you'll see speakers from both conferences, same speakers at both conferences. What's interesting about the National Safety Council is that each state has their own state safety council. So I used to sit on the board of directors for the Wisconsin Safety Council, and they have an annual conference that is very well attended, and they do a very good job of presenting it. And they interact and they work with National Safety Council. There are things that are passed down. I think I provided a video for them as well. And also, the other thing I meant to say is that National Safety Council, I'm sorry, I forgot about this. They have a monthly magazine called Safety and Health, Safety Plus Health. This is the January 2001. CEOs will get it. So they, and this is more of a magazine. American Society of Safety Professionals, they have the Professional Safety Journal. It's also more of a magazine than a journal. But ASSP also, they used to have the Journal for Safety, Health and Environmental Research, or JSHR. That's on hold right now, or on hiatus. National Safety Council publishes the Journal of Safety Research, which is a referee journal, more of just research itself versus a magazine. Just extra stuff. Now let's talk about the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. This is a group that is accredited to provide examination and designations or certifications to recognize people for their level of achievement in the field. The first one is, I shouldn't say the first one, but the farthest on the left is the Certified Safety Professional, or the CSP. That is what we consider the gold standard. So if there were laws put in place that said you need to have an accredited degree, that would be degree programs that have achieved external accreditation, such as ABET, which our program at Whitewater does have. And then the student, after you receive that degree, after you meet the qualifications, you could sit for the exam. And when you pass the exam, that would designate you legally able to practice safety. It would be the CSP is probably what it would be. A lot of people hold it. And then you see there's all kinds of other acronyms here. I do not expect you to memorize them. Probably the one I'd want to focus on would be the GSP, which is the second to the right. This is the Graduate Safety Practitioner. This is a designation that our students receive. If they want it, they have the option to get it after graduation. So we went through, an application review process, and the Board of Certified Safety Professionals deemed us that our degree covers things that one would need in order to complete the ASP, which is the second from the left. That's sort of the intro or the first step towards the CSP. Same sort of model a lot of other professions have. So our students get that designation, and then within 6 years, I think they have to sit for the CSP, otherwise they'll lose the GSP. It's not a permanent thing. Whereas the ASP is something you can keep throughout your career, should you want to keep it. And then there are some other specializations, whether it's a occupational health and safety technician or a construction safety and health technician, certified trainer, all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of other things here they can get, but the CSP, ASP, GSP are the ones I'd want you to focus on the most. We reached the end. I could have talked about this. I had to hold back a little bit. So we covered, or at least I got to talk about sort of the general duties based on an ANSI, which is more of a consensus standard, not a required standard. You realize the safety profession does not require a degree and a certification to practice, but they do exist. So if you want someone, and again, I had said that, yeah, if you were going to be hiring someone, you want to look at these things to see what their background is, but also find out, is their degree accredited? You know, as far as, like here at Whitewater, we're accredited by ABET, and you can go to ASSP's website, BCSP's website, and search their educational programs and find out which programs are certified or accredited. Sorry, accredited is a proper term. And then if they get the CSP, or if they have it, find out how they prepared for it. You know, did they really do the work to pass it, or did they take a shortcut? And then you know whether you have someone who's reliable or not. Have them demonstrate what they know in the interview. What have they accomplished? I prepare my students to bring evidence of their work, whether it's through their capstone internship or course projects. Show that you can do things. And we're speaking to the HR students right now. So you get to see a basic idea of what others may ask or require through that hiring document that you're going to look at, or INSHPO, which is the international, should you go work internationally. And then we covered National Safety Council, Wisconsin Safety Council, and BCSP. So please read Chapter 2. I have a couple other posted articles that are short. Skim through the INSHPO, watch the other videos, and please visit the website.